Hi team, Melissa from Melissa vs. Fibromyalgia here, and I have just realised that I have never given a full origin story, for lack of a better term. I always talk about my positive improvements, and I talk about what I have been doing and how I look forward, but I never talk about where I came from except for in a bit of a nutshell. So I thought I would quickly share what isn't a very nice story. So I guess it starts back when I was 14. I started experiencing pain in my lower forearms. The doctor said it was tendinitis and gave me a wrist splint to use when I needed. And somehow things developed and changed, and at 17, when I was walking home from university at the end of the day, my shoulders would be burning. I would get home just in tears from the burning sensation in my shoulders after being at uni all day. And at this point, the doctors decided to send me off for tests, and it wasn't a very pleasant experience. The specialists that I saw basically, almost overtly, I can't remember what they exactly said, but implied that they didn't believe me because the pain changed, the intensity changed, and how I experienced it and where I experienced it changed. So they didn't believe me. I don't know what they thought, how fun it was for a 17-year-old to be going for these tests and seeing doctors. But anyway, so I was left to my own devices, and as I plodded my way through university as best I could, in the last semester I was hit by a very bad bug. It was like a supercharged cold, and the fatigue was so bad. In order to get through one shift at work, I needed 2 bottles of V, and it still wasn't working. So I went to the doctor and ended up on antibiotics. They never told me what it was, but it took a good 3 weeks to start to get better, but that fatigue never receded. Meanwhile, I graduated university, and the doctor had no idea what was wrong with me, so I carried on as best I could. I always wondered why it was so hard for me. It was just so much harder for me to do what everybody else was doing. And it got to the point where I was 25, I was working 9 to 5 in a non-profit organization. I wasn't doing incredibly long hours. I very rarely had overtime or anything like that, but I just struggled. And in order to do the job well, I had to work really hard. I had lists upon lists so that I didn't forget stuff, because I had a lot of cognitive difficulties. I couldn't remember things. It was so difficult. And I would not sleep very well at all. It would take me a long time to get to sleep, and then I'd wake up regularly, and then at 5 in the morning I'd wake up so stiff and sore, my neck just locked up, and I'd have to basically crawl out of bed, get my heat pack, and lie down for a couple of hours with my heat pack, and then get up and kind of drag myself to work. And on the way I would have to have a very strong coffee just to try and push that fatigue back a little bit, and then I'd have to have a painkiller to try and push the pain back just a little bit. And that would give me a very sore tummy. I remember sitting in the boardroom many mornings, hiding from people, trying to nibble on crackers because I was so nauseous. I was shaking and trying not to vomit. And then I would kind of do my best to get through the day, and about 3 o'clock it would just get super hard. The fatigue was so bad, I could have used matchsticks to hold out my eyes. So I'd have another bit of caffeine. And then by 5 o'clock, when I was on the bus going home, I really struggled not to vomit from the pain or pass out from the fatigue. They were very uncomfortable bus rides home, and then I did very little in the evening. The only thing I could do was lie down in bed and watch television series on DVD, which isn't very fun, especially when you're in your mid-20s. I love reading more than anything else in the world, and I did not have the ability. I didn't have the physical ability to hold a book up. I didn't have the brain capacity to read and understand. I was just finished at that point of the day, and in the weekends I did very, very little. Some Sundays I couldn't even make it to church. It was very difficult and not very fun. A couple of my closest friends at that time moved away to do the overseas thing, and I couldn't do it. There was just no way I could have gone, and the friends that I had left I could hardly see because I just couldn't do what they were doing. I couldn't go out late, I couldn't drink, I couldn't do any of those things. So it wasn't fun, and this doctor wasn't helping me. Somewhere about, I think I was around 24, but I can never remember exactly, but a friend was living in the UK and she sent me an article about fibromyalgia, and that resonated with me. So I took it to my doctor, and she checked the tender points and said, yeah, it's fibromyalgia, but she didn't do anything else. And I had this kind of intuition, this sense that if I could work slightly less, then my life might improve, then I might feel a bit better, I might be able to cope better. And this GP discouraged me, saying, look, you'd still be sore, you'd still be tired, you just won't be happy with the outcome. Unfortunately, she was wrong. Fortunately, I did it anyway. So my parents said, hey, we're moving to Auckland, will you come with me? And I said, okay. They were taking my 2 youngest brothers, and so I went along with them. I managed to find a job for 27.5 hours a week, so I was able to make enough to live while living back with my parents. And for about a year, I just went to work and came home and looked after my little brothers when they finished school. And that was about it. I first reduced how much exercise I was doing, so I was forcing myself to do quite a lot of walking because it was good for you. And so when I reduced how much I was doing, I actually reduced a significant level of the pain. But then I began to work up slowly again, so I'd increase by a few minutes every now and then, and I got to about 25 to 30 minutes, and that has remained a really good figure for me, that balance between too much and not enough. And at the same time, I started seeing a physio, and she was working on my neck and making a big difference. I didn't know then, but she was working on my trigger points. And trigger points in the last few years has been something that's made a huge difference, knowing about and being able to treat. But anyway, those little bits got me just that bit further, and the pain receded just enough and the fatigue receded just enough that I was able to start researching. And so that's when I really started working on the journey, and it still took another several years after that. I had to do a lot of work, and I started trying things slowly, and I'd made a bit of progress, and that's when I became pregnant. And unfortunately, there was like nothing online about being pregnant with fibromyalgia, and I met a specialist who said, oh, well, you should be feeling better because you have fibromyalgia while you're pregnant. And I met another one who said your fibromyalgia doesn't affect your pregnancy and vice versa. And I thought, how crazy that is that you say that, because our body is a whole. And I now know that they definitely affect each other. And I've written entire books and blog posts on these things. But as I was pregnant and I was vulnerable and I was in a lot of pain and I was exhausted and nobody could help me and I had no idea what to do, I just started writing. And so my blog was a bit of an outlet to write out how I was feeling and what I was going through. And then when I finished being pregnant, I was able to kind of look back at the patterns and say, okay, well, here's what helped me, and formulate ideas of what I would do if I was to do it again. And it kind of just built from there. And I got to a point where I had so many blog posts, but it's so hard, you know, when you've got a ginormous archives, it's hard to point people through those archives tidily. So then I did the work of putting it together in a book, and that's how my book came about. But everything has just become, come along organically as I have learnt, and I'm now at the point where I'm so thankful every single day. I look back and I was miserable. I was not living. I don't know. I genuinely don't know how my body didn't just conk out. It really felt so bad, and I will never let myself get back to that again. Everything I do is to stop myself ever getting back there. And that's why I have shared my journey. That's why I work with people. That's why I go on and on about the things that have helped me the best in case it helps someone else, like low-dose naltrexone. I am so thankful every single day that I can sleep in more than 1 or 2 hour blocks, even with a newborn baby. I am so grateful, because the feeling of not sleeping for those many years, I can't even explain it, because it's not just the not sleeping, it's the effects of the not sleeping physically, but it's also those effects emotionally. It is not fun to live with that level of sleep deprivation and then have nobody understand it. My 20s were wasted. they are gone and I can't get them back. And so everything I do is because I don't want someone else to suffer like that. So that's why I do what I do. I know I usually talk very positively, and I usually talk kind of from when things started getting better, and I'm positive but realistic. But the reality is, this is, my story. This is where I came from, and I don't want that for other people. So that's where my blog and my book and my templates have come from, and that's why I'm starting to work with people to help them on their journey, because what I did works for me, but it's not going to necessarily work for you, because we have different symptoms. Things came on different ways. There's just a multitude of complexities to this illness, and even if your doctor is understanding and is helpful at a 15-minute consultation, they can't help you. They can say, okay, you need to eat healthier, and you can go, well, I don't know how to do that, I'm exhausted. And so that's where, I want to start filling that gap. But it hasn't been easy to think about how hard it was back then, and how far I've come, and it's still not perfect. I still don't have a full life, but I am far, far away from what that was, and I just wanted to share that today. I would love to hear your story. Please do leave a comment below if you have a story to share about your diagnosis and how long it's taken you to feel a bit better. Do come along and join the Melissa This is Fibromyalgia Facebook group. I'll leave the link below, and I'll also leave a link to my blog in case something there is helpful to you. If you like these videos, if you like learning about fibromyalgia and how to fight chronic pain, fatigue, insomnia, and all the other things, do like and subscribe. Do come to my blog, and I will talk to you next time. See you later.